What's the best way to remove noise from your recordings? And is the Shure SM7B really the best mic for every podcast? That's coming up on the New Adventures of Indiana Jim, episode 5 for August 17th, 2025.
Coming to you not exactly live from
The cliffs of insanity!
It Must Be Indiana Jim.
All right, we are back at it 6 weeks in a row. I personally, I almost can't believe it. We've been going over a month now on the New Adventures of Indiana Jim, and still learning the process to this and how best to go about it. And I'm figuring some things out. And one of the biggest things I'm figuring out is, again, a little segment I like to call 1% Better. And in this segment, first of all, let me just say, this is going to be a shorter episode than maybe what you've been used to lately. I only have two things really to talk about. As far as news headlines go, there wasn't anything that really jumped out at me for this week's episode. And I'm not sure why that is. It could be that I haven't scrolled X or Twitter as much as I have normally been in the habit of doing. A lot of times I'll see somebody respond to something with a link. They'll link a news story and they'll say something and I'll say, that looks interesting. We talked last week about Disney and Gina Carano reaching a settlement. As far as I know, there's nothing new there. There is a report, or not a report, but this appeared on Rebel Force Radio where they played a clip from a show where a Hollywood scooper said that, just kind of casually mentioned that Kathleen Kennedy was offered the opportunity to produce the sequel to Heat, and she passed it up because they said that her last day at Lucasfilm was going to be in January, at the beginning of the next year. So, and that Carrie Beck and Dave Filoni were going to do a double-headed studio head with Lucasfilm. So we'll see where that goes. But as far as anything interesting in entertainment headlines right now is not anything that jumped out at me. So what I want to do is kind of go over a couple things that I've been thinking about and looking at in my podcasting journey. And one of those things is how best to remove noise from our recordings. Because the way I was doing it before wasn't working to my liking. If you listen to last week's episode, I've been playing with noise gate, noise filtering, and it's really good about shutting off or closing that gate and shutting off the noise floor, this window unit air conditioner that I have blowing back to my left. But every time I talk, that opens the gate and it allows my voice to come through, but it also allows the room noise to come through. And so what that does is kind of create an inconsistent sound in the speaking. I also have been toying with the EQ and the compression and not really finding something that I particularly like. A little while back, there was a video from Mark Yoshimoto Nemkov who, when he went to Tokyo and he needed to submit some recordings for a client, and the only space he had early in the morning in his hotel in Tokyo was in the bathroom. As you probably know, bathrooms are very echoey. A lot of reverb in there. A lot of reflections.
This is not what I would call a friendly acoustic environment, as you can hear, because this is completely unprocessed. But for the last week, this has been my recording studio, because I've had to cut over 50 tags for Allstate and a 30-second spot for Visa because my clients can't wait for me to come home. So when your work travels with you, you have to have the right equipment.
So he recommended this app called Hush. And I'm going to demonstrate what Hush can do for you. Now, I'm going to demonstrate first the way I've been doing noise reduction, which is like this. So my noise reduction was typically like this. Now you can hear when I stop talking, the noise disappears, but as I am talking, that gate is open and you can hear the room noise in there. And that's not something that we want to have. So this is what I've been using, and it's, frankly, I don't think it's all that appealing to listen to. This is the sound of my audio raw. You can hear the room, no processing, no filtering, nothing. So I thought, well, I'd like to give Hush a try, but it's a $90 app. Now this is on Mac, so it's in the Apple Store. You can get it for your Mac, your MacBook. I've got a MacBook Air, works fine, but it's a $90 app. So I was like, I really wish I could test it. Well, if you go to the Apple Store and you look at the developer, there's a link to the developer. You can click on that and go to their website. You can actually download a 3-week trial version of Hush. And what happens there is it sounds like this. I've found Hush and I started using it, and I'm absolutely blown away by the difference between having Hush on there and not having it on there. And it does some amazing work. So it's a one-time charge of $90. You can essentially create voiceover quality noise reduction if you don't have a booth. Now, the thing about Mark Yoshimoto Nemcoff as a voiceover artist, he has a booth, he has a professional space, professional microphones, professional equipment, and he was a professional traveling in Tokyo when he needed to use this. So the good thing about the bathroom is it was just echoey. There wasn't a lot of noise in the background. So I will say, as with any noise reduction software, the better environment you can create, the more noise you can reduce, ultimately the better quality recording you're going to get. If it's just eliminating reverb and transients from a reflective space, it's not doing nearly as much as when it's trying to filter out a window unit air conditioner in August in Indiana. Now, what I did do is I have this moving blanket draped over a music stand, acting as a baffle about 3 feet from the air conditioner. The air conditioner, I got this wall in front of me. The air conditioner blows this way, but it's over on that side of the room. The baffle is sort of diagonal that keeps the fan from blowing it across this way. So I found that reduces the noise level a few decibels. It doesn't eliminate it entirely, but it helps a great deal. It also helps that I do have something soft on the wall there. I've got the drapes behind me. I've got a moving blanket. You can see it on the window. It's just a big, and this is my heavy moving blanket. That also helps because my windows face the sun to the west. And so I've got that big heavy moving blanket, not just for shade, but also for containing some of that heat over there. So that's the first thing you can do in your room, is just figure out how to get soft things on the wall. Even articles of clothing, record in your closet if you're just doing audio. By reducing reflections off hard surfaces, you improve the overall sound. You reduce the overall volume of sounds in your room because they have less ways to bounce around and come at your microphone. The other thing is make sure that you're using a dynamic versus a condenser. If I have the condenser microphone up here, well, it sounds like this. So we're backing off the microphone a little bit. We're giving it a little more room to breathe. I felt like I was really right up on it, and that just kind of, it kind of changed the quality of my voice. So we're back a little bit. So what a condenser does is takes more sound and condenses it into the microphone, where a dynamic is more responsive to your dynamics, to the dynamics of your voice. If you're up close to it or far back, it can withstand a wider range of dynamics from your voice. But also the pattern picks up less noise from behind the microphone. Well, my AC's over there and it kind of comes this way. If you want to make your recording sound as professional as possible, and you don't have a lot of options as far as a soundproof space, or you record in your car, or whatever your situation, if you want something that will easily and convincingly remove the noise from your recordings, then you want to use Hush. Try that 3-week trial, give it a shot, see how it goes. If you feel like it's worth the investment, I do. So if you feel like it's worth the investment, you can go do that and tell them Indiana Jim sent you, and they will ignore you. But at least you can say it, right? So now I wanted to talk about something interesting, because I've never been a fan of the Shure SM7B. One of the criticisms I have heard is that it's basically an SM57 capsule in a fancy chassis. And it's a little more than that. The SM57 and the SM58 have been mainstays of the live stage for forever. The SM58 is very popular with for vocalists from the stage. The SM57 has been very popular for instruments on stage. I've never been the biggest fan of the Shure microphones. In my experience running sound, I've always preferred the band I was working with. We used Sennheiser microphones for vocals. Much more clarity, much more wide range response. You know, if you're just an average rock band, an SM58's fine for you. You get a better quality sound out of the Sennheiser mics really than the SM58s, at least in my opinion. And as far as instrument miking goes, I used a Carvin drum mic on guitar amps. It didn't color the sound of the guitar amps. The Shure mics seem like they're very present in the mids, and I always felt like I had to do a lot of EQing to turn down the squawk, the high mid range or low mid squawking, depending on the instrument in question. So the SM7B becomes this standard, if you will, across the podcasting and broadcasting space. However, plenty of people have been using other microphones in radio, in broadcasting, and on television. The SM7B, the increased popularity of it has been fairly recent. The question is the SM7B the perfect microphone for your podcast? And you can't just say, get the best microphone, because not everybody's going to sound good on an SM7B. Not everyone's going to sound good on a Neumann U87. The background of the SM7B is it was based on the old SM7, which was a boom mic that they used in Hollywood. The people at Shure said, we want you to use this microphone, but we want you to fix it so it sounds like a good broadcast microphone. So what did they do? They gave it a thinner diaphragm to make it more sensitive. They have a tighter coil, a copper coil, and they gave it a resonant chamber behind it to allow more of the low end to vibrate that diaphragm. The SM7B was basically engineered in such a way that men with deeper voices would sound good on the radio, where it would capture the life of those announcer voices. That's why it had the resonant chamber to capture more of the low end. The original SM7 had these switches. You could dial in a flat response. You could do a low cut, or you had a high mid boost. And this is for these male announcers that maybe have a deeper voice like this and it's a little more resonant. We need to capture a little more of that high end clarity from the voice. If you're a lady and you have a high thin voice, that mic doesn't really do you a good service. It's not intended to faithfully replicate the sound of your voice. So your voice is going to require more attention on the EQ to dial it in just right. Your voice is your choice of microphone is very dependent on the sound of your voice. Your voice is as individual as your fingerprint. And so just throwing an SM7B in front of someone is not enough. And you have to have an engineer who understands how to use that equalizer, who can dial those frequencies in correctly, knows what to cut and what to boost to make your voice sound good with that microphone. And a lot of microphones are like that. You can throw any mic in front of you and use it, but you have to know what you're doing or learn by trial and error how to dial it in just right for the sound of your voice. Don't just run out and buy an SM7B and go, yep, that's good for me. You should be looking at a lot more review videos, listening to different people, doing mic reviews with different voices and just kind of hearing what they sound like. Now, if you have the budget, you could buy an SM7B, see how it sounds, see how much you got to play with it. And if it doesn't work, you can return it. If you order it like through Amazon, you could return it. If this one doesn't work, send it back, try another one. And me personally, now I have a microphone that's similar to a SM7B. It's a dynamic microphone. It has a similar shape. It's got a resonant chamber behind it, but it was cheap. You don't need to spend $300 or $400 on a Shure SM7B because, again, the microphone isn't going to make you sound good. It's knowing what you're doing with your engineering that's going to make it sound or replicate your voice well. You might be more of a Heil PR40 person. You might be more of an Audio-Technica AT2020 person. There are so many other microphones out there besides the SM7B that don't require as much gain to get a good sound out of it. Having a good sound for your show, your podcast, your video recordings, it's not just about going and getting the mic that everyone else is using because they swear by it and plopping it in front of you and going to town. It's definitely not as simple as plopping a Blue Yeti down in front of you, which is a condenser mic, which is going to pick up your entire environment. So if you really want to make it sound good, you can really make it sound good, but you don't have to spend $400 on a microphone to do it. A really nice microphone can do a lot to capture all the different nuances of your voice. But there's only so much you can do if you don't know what you're doing, I guess is my point. So there's a big learning curve, in other words, and you should start somewhere else to learn how to do what you need to do without spending the $400 on a microphone. And I'm going to put out a couple of videos based on this. I'm going to have to do some serious editing because my brain's not all together today. I've got a few topics planned out that I didn't want to jump, that I'm holding in reserve for times just like this. But these two topics were in my brain this week. Things I was thinking about, things I was talking about with other people. An audio engineer friend of mine. I appeared recently on R&B Talks podcast with Reggie and Brian, and we had a good conversation about fandom and myth, myth and religion. We got into about why men disengage from church life, and so it's a very Christian-centric show if you are into that sort of thing. So go check that out. I'll have a link down in the description and in the show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, please drop a like and subscribe to the channel, and you will get all of the content that I'm going to be putting out there. If you want to leave some feedback for the show, make sure you email indianajimPodcasts@gmail.com. Probably not going to do a voicemail number. Most smartphones have a voice memo feature. Just use that and send it along to indianajimPodcasts@gmail.com. Of course, leave a comment on YouTube and subscribe to the channel, or leave a comment on the Substack post for this episode if you'd like to leave a comment there, or leave a rating and review in Apple Music or on Spotify or wherever else that you are able to rate and review the show. Please tell me what you think, because I would definitely like to hear your opinion. I will always engage in the comments, and I will answer anybody who leaves a comment, because I feel like I would owe that to you. If you take the time for me, I will take the time for you. Well, that's pretty much it. I'll see you next week. Bye.